my guess is that the only way in which we can achieve this is by fixing infrastructure first. That's the critical missing ingredient. I would go to perhaps Ashor and ask you, have we got the money? And to Hennie, ask you, have we got the infrastructure? And then perhaps I can come to Trudi and ask you, I think I know what Hennie's response is, what needs to happen, and Mesh, where do we get the money? Does that order work? Okay. Let's go.
Okay. So the question, is the money available? It's a complicated answer, as everything is.
Can you tell us how much first?
There is a national budget in excess of 2 trillion rand, which sounds like a lot, but 60% of that is reserved for the social wage, housing, healthcare, education, social grants, and so on. So what's left, once you account for the social wage, is actually not very much, but the social wage is critical for social stability in a country of such high inequality. So these are the trade-offs that have to be made. The biggest challenge is that 20% of the budget goes to debt because of the ballooning debt over the last decade, because over the last 10 years, 11 years, 500 billion rand has been given to state-owned companies. It's 15 years, really. And that has really constrained the fiscus in a big way. And that money should have gone into the kind of investment that you're speaking about. It was siphoned off and now sits with some...
That's our infrastructure drought.
Yes. Yeah. And so the capacity for the state to use the traditional finance instruments to borrow and fund infrastructure, which is how it was always done during the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, is not there. The fiscal space simply isn't there. And so we have got to look at different instruments. So the short answer, no, the money's not there, but it's complicated because money can be there. Okay. And it can be there if the country has an appetite for a few things, accepting that concession finance isn't a sin, that the IMF and the World Bank aren't evil people. So firstly, especially the World Bank, they're not. They're generally, you can get concession finance as low as 3%. And in an environment where you're going to take the right decisions, you don't really have the currency risk of it being dollar denominated.
And concessionary finance would come from development finance institutions like the World Bank.
And it's not just the World Bank. There's the Asian Infrastructure Bank, there's the New Development Bank, and so on.
BRICS Bank,
BRICS Bank. So those things. But what we have got to start doing is looking at how can we, even in the domestic market, mobilize capital, create blended finance instruments in the domestic market, de-risk some of that through government guarantees. And for a province like Gauteng, the money can be made available through blended finance. Municipalities have fiscal powers to borrow. It's very rare in most governments and countries that local governments have the fiscal powers to borrow. So they can. They've got to sort out their balance sheets, firstly. They've got to clean up their act. But when municipalities have strong balance sheets and do clean up their act, they're able to access some of this very, very low interest, without affecting the sovereign picture, low interest finance, and sort out their infrastructure pitches. And we're seeing municipalities in South Africa that do that well actually perform, and that lifts the provinces they're in broadly. So the short answer, the money is not available on the government balance sheet, but it is available with the right governance decisions.
Okay. A couple of words, and how much money do we need over what period?
So you must understand what the backlogs in Gauteng look like. And the city of Tshwane, for example's capital budget is dependent entirely on the national fiscus, so it's sort of 1.8 billion rand. They need to be spending between 6 and 7 billion a year. Joburg needs to be spending 18 billion every 3 years, and they're not going to catch up. They're just going to stabilize infrastructure. This is what we're looking at. Ekurhuleni, similarly, its capital budgets have crashed down to in the range of about 2 billion a year, also after the national fiscus, because they're not leveraging their own balance sheets and budgets appropriately. So for a province like Gauteng, you probably need 36 billion over an MTEP of 3 years to get infrastructure sorted. It sounds like a lot in rand terms, but when you look at the global financial picture in dollar terms, it's not a huge amount of money that we need. The biggest challenge, again, is governance frameworks, the political decision makers cleaning up their act, and genuine commitment to saying we're actually prioritizing fixed capital investment over things like bloating mayoral offices with staff or generally the cost of employees. One of the biggest challenges I'm having at the Treasury is we do need more money in local government, but if we were to change the equitable share formula, the municipalities would just spend it in cost of employees and not in investments because they have their own fiscal powers. So it really is the governance side can't be understated.